League of Stars.
Sorry, J9. Sorry,
I'm
J9.
leading, I'm leading. I'm leading, I'm leading. Hey. I'm leading, I'm leading. I'm leading, I'm leading. Hey.
What's up, everybody? It's the Alex Leak and Friends NFL Podcast, back for another week. I'm your host, Alex Leak. I got the crew with me. I got Stoyo.
What's going on, people?
And I got Gavin.
Still here.
Still there. All right. We got a lot to talk about this week. Tons of stories going on in the NFL with week one right around the corner. Let's start with a quarterback getting major money. Packers and star quarterback Aaron Rodgers agreed to a 4-year deal worth $134 million, including $103 million guaranteed. He's now the highest paid quarterback in NFL history. Does any of this surprise you, Gavin? And it's got to be a good move for the Packers.
Yeah, it's a good move for the Packers. He's the only reason that they're competitive over the last few years. Their GM has not been making good decisions, which is why Ted Thompson is no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a elite quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, you can always be competitive. So you definitely want to keep him around. This is a ton of money to give any one player. You're talking over $100 million guaranteed for just over 4 years.
Yeah.
When you're talking about $100 million guaranteed for Matt Ryan 6 years. I know that Matt Ryan is not the quarterback that Aaron Rodgers is, but this is still a lot of money to give one guy. It'll be interesting to see what moves that the Packers will be able to do moving forward as far as free agency goes and re-signing players now that they've put so much of their cap space into Aaron Rodgers. But honestly, they didn't have a choice. You can't let a franchise quarterback, an elite franchise quarterback, go. And he was wanting a new contract, and so they didn't really have a choice. And they'll have him into his late 30s, so he still will be able to play. We see quarterbacks now are playing into their late 30s and still being very productive. At least the elite ones are. So I think it's a good move. It's not a great move. Like, it's not. They didn't get a steal or a bargain or anything like that. But definitely the right move for the Packers.
Yeah, Stoyo, what do you think of this? This has to make Aaron Rodgers a little happier after kind of a rough offseason for him.
Sure, probably, but I bet Aaron's gonna be bitching on the sideline that it should have been like $145 million, and somehow he got lowballed to $134. But yeah, it's an insane contract. He's going to be making $80 million by this March,
Wow.
which is ridiculous. But what is good is this is going to be a huge part of their salary cap, and when he's going to be demanding $33.5 million, that's going to be hard for Green Bay to sign different players with that deal. So as a Bears fan, I welcome that contract, and yeah, I feel that the Packers didn't really have a choice and they had to pay the guy. But it's not a team-friendly deal. If you look at what Tom Brady has done in the past, he wanted to be competitive and pretty much always gave New England some kind of a team-friendly contract. So, yeah, as a Bears fan, I will take this.
Yeah, what do you make of this, Gavin? Like, Tom Brady's always been one, at least in recent memory, to take pay cuts to help the team win, and he's had a lot of success in the playoffs and has those rings to show for it. Do you think this is going to hurt them down the road, all this money going to the quarterback? Does this stat worry you at all? Since Aaron Rodgers' last Super Bowl win, he's below 500 in the playoffs. He seems to be carrying not that great a team into the playoffs every year. And what do you think? Do you think this hurts Green Bay down the road, Gavin?
Yes and no. I think that it does hurt them because of all the contract money that they'll be giving Rodgers.
Mhm.
Like I said before, it's a lot to give. As Stoyo mentioned, it will make it difficult to sign more players. But if you look at their options, I mean, Deshaun Kaiser now is their backup quarterback, and do they really want him to be the starter if Aaron Rodgers leaves? You know, that isn't something that they're been interested in doing. So they didn't really have a choice, but I think that it's going to be difficult to be a truly competitive team. Yes, they'll make the playoffs more years than not, but to be truly competitive is going to be difficult. You look at the Ravens after they won the Super Bowl and Joe Flacco got a huge contract that weight-wise was very comparable to Rodgers. The money isn't the same, but salary cap-wise and percentages, it's very similar. And they've struggled ever since then.
Yeah.
The big difference being that Aaron Rodgers is actually an elite quarterback, where Joe Flacco was for one season.
That's true.
One playoff run.
I'll give you that. I mean, that playoff run was special, but you got to do it at the right time. And yeah, I mean, I agree. You got to pay Aaron Rodgers. That's the going rate, and you just got to deal with it. New England's lucky to have a guy like Brady willing to take those pay cuts because most people aren't.
He signed a 6-year, $91 million contract. I know this is 2013, so the numbers are definitely going to be different, but 2 more years and $40 million less.
Yeah.
Even with the inflation that's gone on since then, that's a significantly lower number for Brady. And he's done that. That's been the Patriot way. Even back in the early mid-2000s, Teddy Bruschi, all those guys, the defensive players took pay cuts so that their team could stay competitive. And they're the only team for the last 20 years that has always been a contender. Every other team has fallen out of favor, and they're the only team that's been able to stay competitive and make the playoffs every year but one. And that was when they went 11-5 even. So that was still pretty nuts.
Yeah. There's not too many organizations like the Patriots that can just keep on rolling.
Last season, Tom Brady made less money than Mike Glennon.
Wow.
Something
That's not good. All right. The New York Giants reached an agreement with their star wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. on a 5-year, $95 million contract extension with $65 million guaranteed. This deal makes Beckham Jr. the highest paid per season, passing Antonio Brown, and the highest guaranteed salary for wide receivers, passing Bucks Mike Evans. Highest paid per season this is all wide receiver records. Stoyo, what do you make of Odell Beckham Jr. getting paid?
I love it. I'm a Beckham fan.
Mm-hmm.
New York chose to finally pull the trigger. And it is a tough trigger to pull because, he's a great wide receiver, but he's also had some injury issues. I'm thinking about his ankles. It's a lot of money to commit to a wide receiver, but if you have a star, pay the man. I am not in the belief of letting the people just walk away, good players. You have to pay your homegrown talent, and I'm glad that they were able to finish this contract before the season started. And I think Rodgers waited for Odell to get his so he could get even a bigger contract.
Yeah, good job for the Giants locking him down. Good move for the Giants, Gavin.
Yeah, I mean, you have to pay the guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's the best player on your team, and so you need to make sure that he stays happy. And that he can will actually stay on your team and not move elsewhere. I do think that they really wish now that they had maybe had drafted
Darnold?
Sam Darnold with a second pick, because the only way that you can have a player that's not a quarterback that's making this much money and truly stay competitive is if you have a quarterback that is on the cheap. And Eli Manning right now is not cheap, and if he does play for 4 more years and they have to re-sign him, he's not going to resign for under $20 million a year, not a 2-time Super Bowl MVP. And so they're going to run into the same issues that I think the Packers will, is that they've got 50% of their cap invested in and two players. If it would be Manning and Beckham. So they're going to have to find a cheap quarterback down the road, I think, in order to really be competitive. You could pay someone quarterback money, but you can only pay one person quarterback money. And the Giants have chosen to pretty much pay Beckham quarterback money. So it'll be interesting to see how it works down the road, but they can't let a guy of Odell Beckham's talent leave. They definitely had to pay the guy. And he can enjoy being the highest paid player for 1 year until Julio gets his contract next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Some stats. Go ahead.
I will say this really quick. Good on Beckham for not holding out and actually going to camp, practicing, being with the team. Julio did the same thing, and I'm hoping this becomes a trend for most situations, because I definitely think it's better for the player and for the teams when the guys can go in and practice, and if the front offices can, follow through on their word that we're going to pay you, we just need some time to figure this nonsense out, but they can have a productive off season. So it's good to see that. Julio, he's waiting a whole year even, which is a huge risk. But hopefully the front office doesn't screw him over next year, and it's good to see the New York Giants follow through on their promise to pay their star player.
Yeah, and I think it helps when a franchise isn't franchise tagging you over and over again when you know what you're worth, you want that long-term deal. You're more apt to trust the organization when they're not franchise tagging you every year.
The funny, these contracts, though, they actually play in favor of the organizations. Like, this deal now, it seems like an obscene amount of money, but next year, this is going to be a steal. And by the end of this contract, it's going to be insane that Odell Beckham is getting paid, $18, $20 million a year. Because the cap goes up double digits every year. And so in 5 years, we're talking about there being, $50 million in excess money that the Giants weren't accounting for when they signed Beckham, and so his percentage is going to be way lower than another star receiver that re-signs a contract, in 3-4 years. So it's always good to sign your big name players at positions that are important. You just have to be careful that you don't sign defensive tackles for an obscene amount of money, because
like Albert Hainsworth.
Yeah,
got a Hainsworth shout out. Speaking of some stats on OBJ, he's played 47 career games, and over the past 15 years, no wideout has more catches, 313, receiving yards, almost 4,500, or receiving touchdowns at 38 than anybody in that time than Beckham. So, pretty good stats, and he definitely deserves the money. We'll see when the cap is a little more team-friendly, or the contract is a little more team-friendly if he decides to hold out then. But good contract for the Giants right now. The Seahawks, just breaking news, just recently dropped the Seahawks linebacker KJ Wright to miss, quote, a couple weeks after a knee scope. So not ideal news for the Seahawks there. They've already lost a lot on defense, and now one of their better guys left over will be injured going into week 1. So, some good news for the Seahawks. They extend wide receiver Tyler Lockett, 3-year, $37.8 million with $20 million guaranteed. Stoyo, what do you think about the Seahawks right now? Good move getting Lockett locked down.
For sure, I like him. He is a good receiver. They also traded for Brett Hundley.
Yep.
So that's Russell Wilson's gonna have to watch out. I'm just kidding. Yeah, Seattle is just, I don't know, that defense does not look like the defense we used to know over there. So I think they're just gonna have to turn the page, and to me, this is the beginning of a rebuild.
Well, I think for the good news for Seattle is they do have Russell Wilson. So it doesn't have to be a complete rebuild. It just has to be a shift. You got to go away from defense and more offensive, and you got to protect Russell Wilson better and provide him with some better athletes. Like you said, Packers trade quarterback Brett Hundley to the Seahawks for a 2019 6th-round pick. So he'll be the backup there. And other than that, not too much of a news up there. Hundley's a decent backup, so they'll take that. The Seahawks. Go ahead, Gavin.
I just want to jump in on the Lockett contract. I'm not a fan of this contract personally.
Okay.
If you look at the money he's getting paid, he's getting over $10 million a year, $20 million guaranteed to a guy who has been productive as some receivers are in 1 year over 3 years.
Yeah.
He's had injury issues. He's played with Russell Wilson his entire career, and he has. I know he's been second fiddle to Doug Baldwin this whole time, but this is not number 2 receiver money, especially one that hasn't been extremely productive. So I think this is a bad move. I like Lockett as a receiver. I like his talent, but I just think this is too much money for
a number 2. You think it's too much?
Yes, I'd call him a low end 2.
Yeah, I would too.
And so we're talking about over $10 million a year for a low end 2.
Yeah.
And I think personally this is a little bit too much. Despite what I said earlier, we're paying the salary cap goes up for every year. That's good for your star players, but I think that when you sign middle of the road players for way too high contracts, I think this is going to hurt you when trying to sign your stars for big money. So this hurts Earl Thomas. I think it kind of. I don't think it takes away his chances of being re-signed to a big contract, but this certainly doesn't help because now they've invested money in someone that's is a middling player.
Yeah, Seattle seems to be giving money to everybody but Earl Thomas. So
I'm gonna go out on the limb and say Earl Thomas will not play again for the Seahawks.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you.
You think he gets moved in the next week and a half?
I believe he's gonna hold out till he gets traded. I believe he's not gonna wear Seahawks jersey again.
I do too. I don't see him on the field this year in Seattle.
I think he rubbed the owner the wrong way last season after his comments while they were still in the playoff run.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think that he should have done that. Pretty much confessed his love after a loss to Dallas, I believe. So yeah, I think that the new defense not gonna have any room for him, and they're just gonna have to move away from him. It's hard to have your star player there who does not want to play for you. So would you give a old safety a bunch of money even though he does not want to be there and he is an injury risk?
Yeah, and on top of that, I don't know if you guys remember, but last year Earl Thomas and Bobby Wagner got into it. I believe it was on Twitter. And Wagner pretty much saying, that Earl Thomas was being bitter and not happy for him or something. So, in my mind, Seattle, the Legion of Boom's done. I've said this week after week. Move on from him. I don't understand these teams that just hold on to a guy forever. Sometimes it's better to just move on and get the most you can for a guy. And he's already said, and other teams have interest. Dallas is an option, Oakland. So if I'm Seattle, I get rid of Earl Thomas, get rid of the distraction, and get someone in there that wants to be there. The Seahawks release kicker Jason Myers, indicating that veteran kicker Sebastian Janikowski has won the job. He just sticks around forever. The Jets claim Jason Myers on a free agency and release a fully healthy kicker Cairo Santos, who's now a free agent. So Janikowski keeping it going. The New York Jets trade quarterback Teddy Bridgewater and a 6th-round pick to the Saints for a 3rd-round pick. The Jets seem to be all in with rookie quarterback Sam Darnold, and he might even start week 1 from what I've been hearing. And the Saints also figure to be moving on from backup quarterback Tom Savage with this acquisition. Stoyo, I know you're a Bridgewater fan. You like seeing him going to the Saints?
Absolutely. I think that's the best that could have ever happened for him.
Yeah.
He was definitely not going to turn his career around in New York behind Sam Darnold. So going to a place with a future Hall of Fame quarterback and an offensive-minded coach, I think is the best thing that can happen. And maybe he's just Drew Brees' heir.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, the Saints got their future QB at a very reasonable price.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that move a lot. I find it interesting that he was on the team's bus and basically got called off the team bus, that he was traded. So
Wow.
that was interesting.
Gavin, how do you feel about the Jets getting a third-round pick for Bridgewater? That seems to be a pretty good haul for a backup, and that's the same. The Browns got a third-rounder for Tyrod Taylor, who was their starter. So a good move, I think, for the Jets as well.
Yeah, I think this is a great move for both teams. You know, the Jets were in a surprisingly great position at quarterback. They really had 3 starting caliber quarterbacks in Bridgewater, Sam Darnold, and Josh McCown.
Yep.
So they certainly didn't need 3 starting caliber guys, and so they had the strange luxury, especially for the New York Jets, to be able to dispose of a starting quarterback and to get a third-round pick out of it is a great deal for them, and it's great for the Saints. They were, it's speculation here, of course, but I think they go to the Super Bowl had they been able to make 1 tackle in Minneapolis last year.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to let Philly put up 45 points on them, especially with Nick Foles. Their defense was too good last year to do that. So I think that this is a great insurance policy for Drew Brees, just in case he goes down, and to give up a third-round pick for a guy that has a pretty cheap contract. I know it's just 1 year, but money-wise, it's really low. And now they have a legitimate backup for Drew Brees, and their Super Bowl run will not come to an end if Brees were to go down for some reason this year. And as Stoyo mentioned, he could be a quarterback of the future. If they win this year, I could easily see Drew Brees calling it. And he's got 2 rings. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. And he could move on, leaving the Saints, without a stud quarterback for a while. And Bridgewater's shown that he can be a starting caliber quarterback. And so they can at least try with him rather than having to draft somebody late in the first round or try to pick up scraps from free agency and or work with Tom Savage. But we've seen that experiment. It doesn't work out for anybody.
Yeah, I'm a Bridgewater fan, and I like this move for him. It's a win-win for both sides, in my opinion. And say Brees does win out, get a Super Bowl and retire, and then Bridgewater's got a perfect home right there. He can step in, and coming off that injury he had a couple years ago, it's nice to see him back where he's at.
Absolutely.
Browns, interesting story here. Browns linebacker Michael Kendricks has been charged by the feds for insider trading. The Browns pretty much released that, they're aware of the situation and they're going to take, comment further at the appropriate time. But just about an hour ago, the Browns released Michael Kendricks, who I believe is still a pretty good talent. Last year he had 77 tackles and 2 sacks with the Super Bowl champion Eagles. But some bad news for Michael Kendricks here, and we'll wonder how, if at all, if he gets back on the field or how much this affects his career. Stoyo, what do you make of this crazy story out in Cleveland?
It's always interesting to see what Cleveland is going to do because what I would do, seems that Cleveland always choose to do something different.
Yeah.
And I would have kept him. I don't have a huge deal with insider trading. I don't think that's a huge offense compared to what other NFL players do during the offseason usually. So at least he didn't beat anyone up. He didn't drive drunk. I'd rather have my NFL players commit insider trades than domestic abuse and stuff like that. So for me, I would have not cut him, but that's just Cleveland, I guess, trying to do the right thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm kind of shocked, actually.
Yeah, I think it's a little interesting that owner Jimmy Haslam, who's got a history of committing widespread fraud against his customers through the Pilot corporation that he runs, is taking such a hard stance against insider trading here. Gavin, what do you make of this whole situation?
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever heard of an NFL player getting suspended or cut or reprimanded for insider trading. So it's kind of, as Stoyo alluded to, it's kind of nice that it's not for domestic abuse or drunk driving or something like that. But it's unfortunate for the Browns. I think that a lot of people, even outside of the Browns organization, were high on their team, and that them taking a big step forward from a 0-16 win season, but losing. I think Kendricks is a talented guy, so it is a shame that he has to leave the team. But I think there's potential for him to get a job still once he potentially gets out of jail. But I mean, there are teams that signed Junior Gillette after the video came out of him whipping people with a belt at the beach. So I think that teams like the Redskins and the Bengals they'll always sign players that are talented that have some off the field issues that's never stopped him before. So I think that he still potentially has a chance to play in the league. His career isn't necessarily over. It's just unfortunate. It's really unfortunate for him that he has to deal with this, but at the same time it's his own damn fault. I feel more for the Browns, and they lose a talented player at a position that is probably their weakest on their defense.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see how it affects them going forward, and we'll see if he can get back on the field. Talented linebacker for sure. The Raiders trade wide receiver Ryan Switzer and a 6th-round pick to the Steelers for a 5th-round pick. Not huge news here. Just another slot guy. We'll see if he can have some success in Pittsburgh. Let's see here.
He's a good special teams guy. So that'll take some pressure off of Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster to return kicks, because they have someone else that is talented, and we'll save those two guys for catching Big Ben bombs.
Yeah.
The triple Bs.
You guys will like this. Jags star corner Jalen Ramsey, heading into his 3rd NFL season, turned analyst recently, breaking down opposing quarterbacks. He had some criticism for quite a few of them, including a guy that we were not all that high on, Bills rookie quarterback Josh Allen. Quote, "I think Allen is trash. That's a stupid draft pick to me. We play them this year, and I'm excited as hell. I hope he's their starting quarterback," end quote. Jalen Ramsey, in 2 seasons, has 128 tackles and 6 interceptions. So he's really stepped up early. Stoyo, I'm sure you feel the same way as Jalen Ramsey about the Josh Allen pick.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wouldn't call it a stupid pick, but I think he has the most likely potential to flunk out of the league. Out of those first 4 QBs that were drafted. I just didn't like it from day one. People fell in love with the guy that has a massive arm, but like I said, to me, that's not a full QB. He has terrible accuracy. He had below 60% completion his entire college career. I don't know. I'm just glad that one of the best cornerbacks in the league agrees with what I said and took it a step further and just announced it to the world.
Yeah, and I'm a big Jalen Ramsey fan, and I'm looking forward to Week 1. Week 1 showdown will be Jalen Ramsey versus Odell Beckham Jr. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Gavin, what do you make of Ramsey's comments about not only Josh Allen, but he had some comments for half the league of quarterbacks?
Yeah, you have to appreciate the confidence the guy has, and he also backs it up with the talent.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always good to see. I think I wish he had a little bit more tact. To call another player trash,
yeah,
I think isn't exactly the way that I would do it. but there's a mental game involved, and he's maybe he's just trying to play that. I'm not sure, but Josh Allen. It's crazy to think because it's potentially going to be Nathan Peterman that starts for the Bills, the guy that threw 5 picks in his first start instead of Tyrod Taylor. Could be the starting quarterback for the Bills, which has to be a really bad sign for Bills fans. I think anyone that had their head on straight that knew that Josh Allen was going to be a project, and maybe Nathan Peterman has just made leaps and bounds and is just that much better than he was last year. To his credit, it was one of his first games in the NFL. Maybe he's had the jitters, but
man,
it's they couldn't take Mayfield or Darnold, so we can't fault them for not taking either of those two guys. But I think that after the preseason, they maybe think they should have taken Rosen over Allen, but we'll see in 3 years what we're saying. But right now things aren't looking good for Josh Allen and the Bills.
Yeah, it could be a tough year in Buffalo, especially if Peterman's starting week 1. I'm not as down on Josh Allen as some, but I definitely like his arm strength. He showed that off in preseason so far, but he's got an uphill road, and he's in a tough place for a quarterback to succeed there in Buffalo. So we'll see. A corner with some encouraging news for a rookie quarterback. Redskins star corner Josh Norman on Jets rookie quarterback and 3rd overall pick Sam Darnold says, quote, "Someone asked me about him the other day, and I was like, yeah, whatever, he's just a guy." Then you go out there and see him making these throws, and you're like, all right, that's not so much a college-level throw. He's putting them right on the money. Everything that I've seen from Sam Darnold so far this preseason is very encouraging, showing mobility, pocket awareness, high accuracy. He looks like a great pick for the Jets. What do you think, Stoyo?
I agree. I think that the Jets still can't believe that they got him 3rd overall.
Yeah.
Especially when the Giants, who they share a stadium with, had the opportunity to trade or to draft him ahead of them. So now he's going to be in the same building for at least the next decade if he turns out. Yeah, I know that the Jets wanted to get Baker Mayfield at 3 because they just assumed that Sam Darnold was going to be taken the 1st overall. So for once, the Jets have a pretty good-looking future, and if they don't mess it up, I think they could build something great over there. I am a fan of their coach. They have a good safety in Jamal Adams. Now, with my favorite QB on this draft, a lot of things can happen in New York, but we'll see. It's going to be really hard to be a rookie in New York, a rookie QB. But if he can start from the get-go, why not?
Yeah.
I would rather have Sam Darnold than Trubisky, but that's just me.
I'm glad you guys have Mitch Trubisky and not Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
You still got to do it on the field. You still got to do it in the regular season when the pressure's on. New York's no cakewalk. Neither is Chicago to be a successful quarterback. So we'll see. Gavin, what do you think of the Jets with Sam Darnold? That's high praise from Josh Norman, one of the league's best corners.
Yeah, that is really high praise, and I think it's absolutely deserved. He has definitely been the best rookie quarterback in the league this year so far. And I thought that I mentioned in a podcast a few weeks ago that I thought that they would sit him behind McCown or Bridgewater, whichever one of those two guys was the starter for them for the first few weeks, especially seeing that they don't have a ton of talent on the offensive side of the ball. But despite that, he's played exceptionally well. He's gone through his progressions really well. He has been making audibles on the line. He's been reading defenses really well. I know that this is preseason, so you're seeing some pretty vanilla defenses from opposing teams. But besides that, he's met the speed of the NFL really well. And I think he definitely should have been the first overall pick, definitely the first quarterback that was taken. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm pretty sure that the Giants are pretty upset with themselves that they didn't take him because 1, maybe 2 more years of Eli Manning is certainly not worth a decade and a half of Sam Darnold. I think.
Let's say, all right, Gavin, let's say the Giants, by drafting Saquon and they get a stellar year out of Eli here before he retires, would you rather have a championship here in the next year or two with Saquon and Eli, or would you have rather rebuilt and gotten Sam Darnold?
I think I still would. I mean, you say a championship, but I don't think they're a championship team this year.
That'd be best case scenario, yeah.
Yeah, best case scenario. I mean, it's hard to argue against the championship because there's no guarantee. Even if you draft Darnold and he looks like the best quarterback that the league has ever had, he could have a career-ending injury in week 2 of his 3rd year, and then they're in the exact same boat, sans championship. But if you are a realist, I think, and you look at the team that you have, I think that you get the quarterback for your next 15 years in Sam Darnold. And Barkley is an incredible talent, definitely the best running back prospect out of this draft. But we've seen, I think that there's not nearly as big a drop-off between Saquon Barkley and Nick Chubb in the second as there is from Sam Darnold and Mason Rudolph, who I know wasn't taken in second, but was the first quarterback taken outside of the first round this year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And so running backs are easier to get than quarterbacks are, and a above-average quarterback is better than a really, really good running back. I'm not sure if I'm willing to say better than an all-pro running back, but they're weighted completely differently. I'd much rather have a good quarterback than a really good running back.
Yeah, I think it's easier to win with a good quarterback than it is with a good running back. You need that quarterback to be good.
Absolutely, because if you don't have, you look at Todd Gurley, who came out as a really high prospect, touted as a really good running back, and you look at his second year when Jared Goff was starting and was really struggling in his rookie year, Gurley did not have a good year. His second year, his first full year, and then Sean McVay showed up, things turned around for Jared Goff, and I think a lot of Gurley's production had to do with the defenses not being able to stack 8 in the box. They made before they were able to force Goff to beat them, and he couldn't at his rookie year. He wasn't able to, and so then they were able to stop Gurley because you've got 3 extra guys down there. So I guess quarterback is more important than running back.
Yeah,
and that's why even going into this draft, I was saying that the Giants should take Sam Darnold if he was available.
Yeah, and we'll see how it turns out, but it looks like the Jets have the guy they wanted, that Sam Darnold. Looks like he can be the quarterback for the future for years to come, so we'll see how it turns out for the Jets. The Redskins signed corner Orlando Scandrick in March, but released him after just 5 months with the team. 31-year-old Scandrick started 11 games in 2017 for the Cowboys. And after the Redskins released him, he signed up with the Kansas City Chiefs. So we'll see what Scandrick has left in the tank there in Kansas City. One of my favorite parts, and I like Hard Knocks because you can see the behind-the-scenes stuff that you don't always hear or see. In episode 2, it featured a back and forth between the OC Todd Haley and the DC Greg Williams. They're at practice. And Todd Haley says, quote, he yells out, "Good teams don't touch the fucking quarterback." And Greg Williams responds, "Block him then." And I liked seeing that behind the scenes with those two. There's a lot of personalities there in Cleveland. So it'll be an interesting year.
Greg Williams of the Bounty Gate.
Yeah, Bounty Gate. And he's a hell of a defensive coordinator. Throw Bountygate out of there. He's had a lot of success in this league. Stoyo, the Eagles are still battling injury key positions. The latest news on Alshon Jeffrey is they're going to take him off of the PUP list, but they still expect him to miss at least 2 weeks of the regular season. Optimistic he could return week 3. And then star quarterback Carson Wentz still rehabbing from the torn ACL. This week, Eagles head coach Doug Peterson was asked, has Carson Wentz been cleared for contact? Peterson's response, he has not. With week 1 approaching fast, the Eagles play a week from tomorrow on Thursday night against the Falcons. Do you expect a slow start from the Eagles, possibly Foles and no Alshon Jeffrey?
Foles should definitely be starting.
Yeah.
They need to start him, especially for week 1. After week 1, they get 10 days off till their second game, so they would have more time. But Carson Wentz is the future of that franchise, so they need to look at the next 10 years and who gives a shit about the first
couple weeks
of this season.
Yeah.
Like, this is September football. This is not important. You want your franchise QB to be ready and completely healed, because you don't want him to re-hurt the same thing again. So once it gets broken, it's easier to be re-broken. So have him wait. And I know the Philly fans are not known to be patient, but you guys just won the Super Bowl. It's okay. No Super Bowl will be won in September. You have a decent backup QB. This is why you had him. So he won you a fucking Super Bowl. I'm pretty sure he can win you some games in September.
Yeah. And
as for Alshon Jeffrey, I love him. One of my favorite players in the league, but availability has always been an issue with him. So I just hope that his body heals and he can get back on the field.
Yeah, Gavin, I would tell the Eagles to take a page learn from what the Redskins did with RG3. Remember that all in for week 1 stuff, all those Adidas commercials RG3 was doing, trying to hurry back from rehab, and we all know how that worked out. I have a feeling that if the Eagles, even if they started 0-3, if they get Carson Wentz and Alshon Jeffrey back healthy at the right time, they can make a push and have a great end of their season. So it's not time to panic in Philly.
No, and Stoyo said they had 10 days off after their first game. I would argue they have 24 days off after the first game, because their next 2 opponents are the Buccaneers in Tampa, who will not have Jameis Winston, which might be a good thing. But they also follow that up the next week with a home game against the Colts, whose defense is projected to be atrocious at best, and will be Andrew Luck's only 3rd game back from injury. So I think that it's definitely best to let Wentz heal up. Mm-hmm. Don't rush him back. You mentioned RG3, and I don't think they're even comparable. Yeah. I think that the situation is, to an extent, you don't want to rush a guy back, don't want him to force himself back from injury. But with their first game's going to be tough, but I don't think that it's worth risking it's worth risking Nick Foles, but it's not worth risking Carson Wentz to bring him back, essentially for one game that they really need him for. Nick Foles, though, has not looked so great this offseason. Against the Browns this last game, yes, he only didn't complete 4 of his passes, but 2 of those incompletions were interceptions. Yep. So I think that the human sacrifice that Foles made to make himself a Super Bowl MVP quarterback last year has worn off, and almost about a 6-month expiration, and he doesn't look like a started quarterback anymore. So there is something to be worried about for the Philly fans if Wentz's injury does extend past the first 4 weeks or so. I don't think that's what's projected, I would not want Nick Foles as my starting quarterback moving forward, but I don't think that the Eagles have to worry about that too much. They might just have to deal with 1 week of subpar quarterback play.
Yeah, and I would say that Nick Foles didn't look like a starting quarterback. I believe it was week 16 or week 15 of last year when it was like nobody wanted to win the Eagles-Raiders game. And that's why it surprised me so much that he played as well as he did in the playoffs. So Foles has like a switch. Either he's on or he's off. And 3 turnovers in that preseason game didn't look good, and it looks bad on the eyes. But patience, Philly. I have a feeling it'll all work out in the end.
But why would you turn that off, though? Like, I don't understand. Like, yes, sometimes he looks great. Like, when he was starting for the Eagles, when Andy Reid was there, he looked really good.
Yeah.
But why would you turn that off?
I don't think he has control. He doesn't have control over the switch.
Really bad. But, like, right now, you're talking about a team that doesn't even have the offensive coordinator or the quarterbacks coach that they had last year.
Yeah.
And Nick Foles looks worse. I don't think that's should be that big of a surprise. I don't think that this is a fluke that Foles looks worse than he did last year. I think that ties directly into those 2 guys leaving their team, those 2 personnel leaving, and Nick Foles not being a true starting caliber quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
I think that OC was really good, and that QB coach, John DeFilippo, who became the Vikings OC, is the next Sean McVay in my book. That guy used to prepare full tests for the QBs every week last season, and they would have to take something ridiculous, like a 20-page test every week before they had to play. So I think that what hurts Philly is losing those 2 key offensive gurus. And also, what happens in the preseason, I don't really care. Preseason is meaningless. I remember one year the Lions went 4-0 in the preseason and then won 0-16. Last year, the Cleveland Browns went 0-16 in the regular season, but went 4-0 in the preseason. So preseason doesn't mean anything. The entire thing about the preseason, you want to come out without an injury.
I won't say that it's meaningless. Yes, the Lions, if you look at just their win totals from that year, trust me, I remember this all too vividly. Yes, they did go 4-0. We were the preseason champions. But if you looked at those games, you know who won those games for us? Drew Stanton. Drew Stanton won those games for us. We did not go into the 3rd and 4th quarter with the lead, but it was Drew Stanton that came back and beat the 3rd and 4th string defensive squads for the other teams and won those games. He is not only just a great dancer on the sideline when Larry Fitzgerald is scoring long-ass touchdowns, he also is a great quarterback against third-string defenses.
Well, there you go.
So I don't think that the preseason is meaningless. It is crucial to look at the starters and see how they play, how the starters of the offense and defenses fare against starters for other teams. You can't just look at one player's stats and say, oh, this is how he did. This is how he's going to do against the defense or offense of other teams, because they do switch out personnel. But when you compare the offenses of the first squads of the offense and defense of both teams, it just gives you a relatively good idea of what the season looks like, at least for the first few weeks. Things change, obviously, throughout the season, but I don't think that the preseason is meaningless. I don't think that you
disagree.
Stoyo, all right. Stoyo, you understand? You know that how many position battles are figured out in the preseason? How many starters are pick and chose? How much goes into the preseason? It's not meaningless. I get that.
You see that the Bears have rested their starters the past 2 games, and tomorrow games will be completely meaningless. They're trying to remove preseason games right now. They're talking about making it an 18-game season and cutting 2 preseason games out.
Yeah.
Belichick and the Patriots start their guys in every game except for the 4th one.
Yeah, it's not meaningless for sure. It's not always the most important. It's not a regular season game. The win and loss doesn't matter. But there's a lot of other stuff that's figured out in the process that matters. There's a lot of players fighting for their jobs, fighting for their career on every chance they get in the preseason. So I would say it's not meaningless. And there's a lot of, if you look for it, there's a lot of good stuff that you can get out of the preseason. But it depends which team you're rooting for, what position battles are going on along the way. The Broncos, speaking of preseason and quarterback depth chart, the Broncos have moved Chad Kelly, Jim Kelly's nephew, to second string and dropped Paxton Lynch to third string. If you guys remember, Elway traded first and third round picks to trade up with Seattle to take Paxton Lynch in the first round, calling him their quarterback of the future. Safe to say this hasn't worked out. Adam Schefter recently tweeted that Paxton Lynch's trade value right now is 0. So Chad Kelly will start preseason week 4. So I'll be interested to see what Paxton does Chad Kelly does. I'm rooting for him. It's a JUCO product.
He played for Ole Miss.
He played for Ole Miss, but he also went to East Mississippi for JUCO.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just for a year. I think.
He got drafted because of his Ole Miss time.
Yeah, absolutely. But he had to
Laquan Treadwell, and actually, that's not that good of a thing at this point.
Treadwell.
Well, wherever he was in college, it doesn't really matter because he won't be playing the big leagues for too much longer.
Who's that?
Paxton.
Oh, Paxton.
No. Oh, I'm talking Chad Kelly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whichever.
Paxton's on the way out.
It doesn't matter.
Chad Kelly, man, he's played well this preseason. I think he, I don't know, if he can follow up with a good preseason next year, he could be some trade bait for someone, I think.
Yeah, I'm rooting for Chad Kelly.
He's a young guy. He played well in college. And, yes, he didn't play for, he was drafted like a 6th round, I want to say.
Yeah.
No, he's Mr. Irrelevant.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah.
Man, I'm rooting for him hardcore now. I want Mr. Irrelevant quarterback to become, the next best quarterback in the league. That would be one of the coolest stories.
Hey, it wouldn't surprise me
if the Bears don't have him.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I've been saying this whole time that Case Keenum is a bad fit with Denver. What if Chad Kelly gets a chance to start a couple games this year? I'll be looking for that.
Keenum has not looked. He's looked like Case Keenum of 2016 and earlier.
Yeah.
No, not that bad. He's been a little bit better than that, but he certainly hasn't looked like Keenum of 2017.
2017 Keenum was a flash in the pan.
That he was Joe Flacco of 2014. Whatever that was.
Let's stop hating on Joe Flacco.
No, man, no. You can't call yourself elite if you have one elite 6-game stretch. If you call yourself elite and you're not elite, I'm going to give you shit for it. That's just how it is.
That postseason was elite though. 11 touchdowns, no picks. The only quarterback to do that since Joe Montana.
Yeah, and this is why he got $100 million for it.
Yeah.
And their team has sucked ever since.
Nah, they've been relevant.
Yeah, that's good coaching.
I hear you.
Not
I hear
good
you.
quarterback play.
At least he didn't knock out his girlfriend at a casino.
I mean, you could say
his running back did.
Yeah.
I could bring up a massive list of what at least he didn't, but that doesn't make him a good quarterback.
Oh, get out of here, Gavin. All right. Broncos media believes rookie running back Royce Freeman out of Oregon should start week 1. He's showing good vision and explosiveness. So we'll be looking for maybe the Broncos have found their running back of the future in Royce Freeman.
Right now, he's still second on the depth chart, though.
Who's the guy ahead of him right now?
Devontae Foreman is ahead of him as of this point. I fully expect that to change.
Yeah.
As the year goes on, being out here in Oregon, I got the opportunity to see Royce Freeman play, and I definitely think he's a talented guy. And I definitely think he's more talented than Devontae Foreman.
I agree. I liked Foreman at Texas, but I like what Freeman has shown me so far in preseason.
Yeah, as of right now, Freeman's stock has dropped. I don't think that he's projected to be a first a starter at this point. Sorry, I've got a fantasy draft tomorrow, so I'm thinking fantasy-wise. But as of right now, like, he shot up. He was expected to be the starter, and then their coach came out and said that he was second in the draft, the depth chart at this point. But the season is extremely young, and I fully expect Royce Freeman to take over. But we've seen this happen before. D'Angelo Williams was a first-round pick and was kind of a middle-of-the-road guy. And then they drafted Jonathan Stewart, also out of Oregon, just happens to be. And D'Angelo Williams said, fuck that, I'm going to be a 1,500-yard rusher. And he went on to do that. Now, Devontae Foreman, not D'Angelo Williams, but you get someone to light a fire underneath you and push you for a starting job. We've seen it before. It pushed guys to take over. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But as a pseudo Oregon fan, I'm really hoping that Freeman takes over.
Nice.
Pseudo fan.
All right, two-time Pro Bowl tight end Julius Thomas announces retirement from the NFL to go back to school and pursue a PhD in psychology and focus on CTE. So that'll be good. That's a good thing. Hopefully he can fix the problem that's going on in the NFL. Good to see Julius Thomas doing that. Let's see here. Jags wide receiver Marquise Lee done for the season after suffering ligament damage to his knee on a brutal hit from a Falcons safety. Stoyo, do you think that with Lee going down, Dez Bryant still looking for a job? Do you think Jacksonville could be potentially a good landing spot for Dez Bryant?
No, I do not.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dez Bryant has too big of an ego to just come in late into the offseason and just, like, go into a wide receiver room, and I would just expect him to create havoc. So I don't think Dez is going to be picked up by anyone, and he just announced this week that he's probably going to sign somewhere throughout the season. And I think the reason why that is he doesn't have an offer right now.
Well, actually, he got an offer from the Ravens earlier this offseason, and the Browns just offered him a 1-year, just under $5 million deal. So he's turned down 2 offers. My advice.
The Raven offer, I heard about it, but I don't think that was like what he wanted. He thought he could have gotten better, and then the market kind of dried up. I think if the Raven deal was still on the table today, he would gladly take it.
Well, the Browns offered him the 1-year deal, and he turned that down too. My advice to Dez is if you want to play in the NFL, maybe accept a deal. Otherwise, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Dez Bryant misses the entire 2018. The NFL, it's fickle.
Not for long.
Yeah, 1 minute you're on the league, the next minute you're not. And so we'll see what Dez does going forward. Gavin, do you agree that Jacksonville's not a good fit for Dez Bryant?
Yeah, I don't think that he goes to Jacksonville. I don't think Jacksonville's interested in picking up
a diva?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, my initial thought is that they know that Blake Bortles is not a great quarterback, and so Dez Bryant is not going to get the focus on offense that he would expect. But they also chose to extend or accept a 5th-year deal for Blake Bortles, so they obviously think he's a decent quarterback. But the offense for that team is going to go through Leonard Fournette, and they have a lot of new and young talent on that team. Keenan Cole, Dede Westbrook. They signed Dante Moncrief in the offseason. They signed Austin Seferian-Jenkins, a talented tight end who just has been able to live to potential. They also have DJ Shark and Rashad Green, relatively high draft picks for them that haven't had the opportunity at this point, or haven't at least shown that they live up to their draft status. But I think there's too many question marks and potential young weapons on that team to sign someone like Dez Bryant, who has shown over the last year that he can't separate from defenses. I think I don't think he goes for the Jaguars, but I think a really good fit for him, for a variety of reasons, is the Philadelphia Eagles. Alshon Jeffrey is hurt, so if they sign Dez Bryant, they'll give him more time to come back. But in addition to that, he can stick it to the Cowboys twice a year.
Yeah, I like that idea. I think what we're dealing with Des Bryant is an identity crisis. He still believes he's a number one weapon, but he's slowed down. He doesn't have separation skills like he used to. And so he wants to get paid like a number one. The quicker he realizes he's no longer a number one, the quicker he'll be on an NFL roster. And I agree 100%. I think Philly's a great option for Des Bryant, but we'll see if he's willing to humble himself and take that kind of role on a team. Otherwise, he may not be playing.
I agree with you, Gavin. That's a great situation for him. Just Des, remember Latrell Sprewell. Don't do that.
Yep.
The problem with the Eagles, though, is they don't have a ton of cap space. So while he isn't a number one receiver, because of his name, the time that he spent in the league, he is going to command a decent price. So unless he takes the veteran minimum, which is only going to be a couple million, which I don't see Des Bryant being that guy. But unless he does that, I don't think that the Eagles are going to be willing to, or even possibly able to, pay him the contract that he's expecting. So as great a fit as that would be, given their wide receiver situation currently, and given the fact that they play the Cowboys twice a year, and I would choose to watch both of those games every year just to see Des Bryant go off. I don't think it's going to be able to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. It would be nice to see. It's a nice Madden signing, but in real life, will it happen? I doubt it, but we'll see what happens going forward. A couple injury notes. Bucks running back Charles Sims suffers a knee injury week 3, done for the season. Jags, we already talked about Marquise Lee, done for the season. Browns Tyrod Taylor injures wrist in week 3 preseason game after falling on it, going out of bounds. It looked bad live, but the good news is it was just a dislocated pinky and a bruised hand, and Taylor did return to the game, which kind of confused me since it's preseason, but nice to see him bounce back though. Ravens rookie tight end Hayden Hurst has a stress fracture in his foot and will undergo a procedure to insert a screw in his foot. First rounder expected to be out 3 to 4 weeks. Dolphins head coach Adam Gase says wide receiver Devontae Parker still can't catch a ball in recovery from finger injury. And Giants had a big injury scare. Star defensive end Olivier Vernon carted off the field, but turns out to be just a sprained ankle, so they're all holding their breath on that one. Veteran corner Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie signs with the Raiders. Gavin, the Patriots continue to reshape their offensive weapons. They released wide receiver Kenny Britt. Wide receiver Eric Decker announced his retirement. The Patriots also agree to a deal with guard Shaq Mason on a 5-year, $50 million deal. Gavin, what do you think about what's going on in New England? With Britt and Decker both gone now, do you think they need to sign someone to help shore up the receiving core?
I think they should definitely look to sign somebody, especially with Julian Edelman missing the first 4 games with suspension.
Des Bryant?
No. Not Des Bryant. They already have a not super fast guy that can catch balls over the middle in Rob Gronkowski and Dwayne Allen, so I don't think that Des Bryant is the guy to go to New England. But if you look at their receiving core right now, they've got Julian Edelman, again, who's going to miss the first 4 games, and then Chris Hogan, who definitely showed that he could be a solid number 2 receiver last year. And then your next guys are Cordero Patterson, who had a great rookie season and then fizzled out in Minnesota and also wasn't great in Oakland. And then Philip Dorsett, who never was able to live up to his first-round hype when he played in Indianapolis with Andrew Luck. So those are the 2 guys that you have to fill in for the first 4 weeks for your number 2 and number 3 receiver roles. So depending on how the Patriots are feeling about their running back situation, they might need to look at some wide receivers to sign, unless they plan on just pounding the ball. They have a surplus of talented running backs. The Patriots do, and we've seen them through over years past use multiple running backs throughout the year. You've got your short down guys and Mike Gillislee, assuming he can hold on to the ball. You've got the guys that can catch the ball out of the backfield, and Rex Burkhead and James White. And they also drafted Sony Michel in the first round, which is kind of crazy for Bill Belichick Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
So you think that they must have seen something really special in him, and maybe they plan on running the ball a bit more, and protecting Tom Brady is definitely number one reason why they re-signed their guard. But maybe they also expect to have a stronger running game this year than in years past. And so they're not desperate to fill a wide receiver role with especially with Edelman coming back in the fifth game. At that point, I think they're going to be looking pretty good. When you have a weapon like Gronkowski, he's essentially a starting receiver for you.
Yeah, just getting Gronk and Edelman on the field together will be a sigh of relief for New England. NFL suspends Ravens corner Jimmy Smith 4 games for violating league's personal conduct policy. The Chiefs release veteran running back Charkandrick West, with the Jets scoop him up. Stoyo, the Vikings signed safety George Iloka to a 1-year deal after the Bengals released him. Iloka reportedly wanted to reunite with former Bengals DC, now Vikings head coach Mike Zimmer. So the Vikings defense just keeps getting better.
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings are probably going to be fighting for the NFC North crown with Green Bay, and that defense is one of the most stacked defense as is. So,
you think Iloka a good fit there?
I don't know if he's going to play that much on that defense, to be honest.
I bet they'll squeeze him in. He played. He was playing some for Cincinnati. I bet he'll get on the field.
He might, but he's probably not going to be starting.
He might not start. Yeah, we'll see.
There've been some reports that he is going to be used as a hybrid linebacker.
Nice.
Because they between Sendejo and Harrison Smith, they've got the safety position locked up, so they don't need him in there. But I'm not sure what they've got Kendricks and Barr at linebacker, who are really talented guys. So I'm not sure if they're looking to bring him on the weak side as a hybrid safety corner guy, safety linebacker guy. He was talented. The reason he was cut from the Bengals, at least reports, so that it was because of salary reasons. He was due over $5 million, and so they were looking to bring in some younger talents. So it wasn't for it wasn't that he wasn't able to play. He just was commanding too much money for what the Bengals were wanting to do. So I think he's still talented. Just finding a spot for him, as Stoyo mentioned, on that Minnesota defense will be the biggest test.
Yeah, and I love that position. I would use him in that position. I like the safety linebacker position that you're starting to see more and more in college. And the Cardinals started the trend in the NFL. And it really adds a playmaker on the defense. Linebacker / safety that can guard a running back out of the backfield or out in the flat and can bring him on a surprise blitz. So
the old Shea McClellan position.
Yeah, kind of something similar to that.
Except good.
I'm just kidding.
McClellan was a little bit bigger. It's like the smaller linebacker type role, and
he was a defensive end.
Yeah,
he did everything.
Jabril.
He did nothing.
Like what Jabril.
He did everything terribly.
Like what Jabril Peppers did at Michigan, and the Cardinals have a guy, I can't think of his name right now, but they run that system as well. The Rams signed right tackle Rob Havenstein to a 4-year, $32.5 million deal with $16 million guaranteed, making him the second highest paid right tackle in the NFL. The Bills going with an all-Seattle kicking team. Bills have already have former Seahawk Stephen Hauschka as their kicker, and now have agreed to a deal with former Seahawk punter John Ryan. Former Redskin DN Junior Galette is visiting teams, trying to land a job before Week 1. Visits the Rams and the Seahawks, and is in talks with the Redskins. Stoyo, I want to get your thoughts here. Bears linebacker Leonard Floyd on pace to play in the season opener at Green Bay despite a broken hand. And from what I've heard, Roquan Smith expected to play week 1 as well. Hopefully we get both those guys on the field.
Hopefully.
It'd be nice. I mean, we're going to need all the weapons we can get going up against Rodgers and Lambeau week 1. Hopefully we don't get embarrassed to start the year.
You know what would also be nice?
Yeah.
Having Khalil Mack on that team.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see get Khalil Mack out of Oakland, get him on a field somewhere.
He's available. A few hours ago, the Raiders have said that they would be willing to trade for at least 2 first-round picks. Would you do that?
For the Bears, I would not. I'm a big fan of Khalil Mack. I would want him on a team, but 2 first rounds seems like a lot to give up for Khalil Mack. Me and Gavin talked about this a couple weeks ago that the Raiders might just want too much for Mack. Let's say Mack wanted to go to Detroit. You guys need pass rushing help. Would you give up 2 first rounds for Khalil Mack?
I would not.
Yeah.
I mean, if you bring up the 2, they're asking 2 first rounders. That's exactly what New York was asking for Odell Beckham. And Odell Beckham, as far as wide receiver is concerned, is probably a better, higher up at his position than Khalil Mack is at defensive end. Not because Khalil Mack is a bad player or anything, just that's how good Odell Beckham is. And I didn't hear about a single real offer that came in for Odell Beckham.
Mm-hmm.
2 first rounders is a lot to ask for, but then not only are you having to give up 2 first rounders, which you look at teams like the Redskins that gave up 2 first rounders and swapped first rounders with the Rams to get RG3, and you saw how much they struggled over the years because they were not able to build through the draft because they didn't have first round picks anymore, and they sucked until those picks were super high. But it's not worth it for someone to take that on. And then on top of that, you have to deal with the headache of re-signing Khalil Mack. That issue has still not been resolved. And so not only do you have to obtain him, he's still going to be unhappy. It's not that he doesn't want to play in Oakland. He wants to get paid. And so you still would have to find a way to pay the guy, we're looking at $20+ million a year for a defensive end, which is a lot of money to pay, and you need to have a really young, cheap quarterback in order to be able to afford paying that much money for a non-quarterback position, and there are very few teams that are in that situation.
Yeah, and I'm still in the belief that the best option available is the Seahawks and Raiders. Earl Thomas and a pick for Khalil Mack. Gavin, you came up with that trade idea, and that's still my favorite one so far. Stoyo, according to senior NFL reporter Albert Breer, the Bears have made center Ronis Grasu available via trade. Another stellar pick by Pace. And another guy that Pace is responsible for, Bears' often injured wide receiver Kevin White, scores his first touchdown catch in preseason versus the Chiefs, Week 3. While he burns KC's newly acquired corner Orlando Scandrick. 2 questions here. Would you trade Grasu and the Kevin White having some success in preseason give you reason for optimism?
First of all, I would not trade Grasu because I don't think there's a trade market for him.
Yeah.
I believe he's going to be cut.
Mm-hmm.
He is not an NFL lineman. I have seen him just get destroyed over and over again. He just doesn't have enough strength to keep up with an NFL defensive tackle.
Yeah.
And Kevin White to me is just garbage, and it does not matter what he does. Yeah, he has had a touchdown in the preseason, but like I said, the preseason is meaningless, so it doesn't really matter. He hasn't done anything. He has had under 200 yards receiving for his career. And I would also like to argue that why I would actually spend 2 first-round picks for Khalil Mack.
Okay.
In my opinion, Khalil Mack is one of the top 5 defensive end / outside linebacker in the league. 2 years ago, he was an All-Pro at 2 different positions. I believe he's the only one to ever do that in the same year. And the success rate for first-round pick is about 50%. Some top GMs can bat 60 to 65%. But most of the time, you're going to miss at least on one of those 2 picks. And if you look at the Bears' 10-year draft history, how many first-round picks actually panned out, I think it's about 2 of the last 12 or so years. So in my opinion, yeah, it is a lot to give up, but if you're bad at drafting and you are able to get a 26-year-old stud...
Former Defensive Player of the Year, yeah.
Yeah, I would do that. Not in a heartbeat, but I would definitely do that. You need to sign him first, or have some kind of backroom deal that says if we trade for you, we're going to give you this contract, and he has to verbally agree to that or something. But to me, like, the QB is the most important position in football, and then the second is getting to the QB.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I would debate this. You said that Kevin White is garbage. I would say the talent for Kevin White has always been there. I think he's a skilled wide receiver. The problem is the dude can't stay healthy. And I think
it's more than that.
I disagree. I think that the first round, or the talent is undeniable. I think that he's got hands, he's got jumping ability. I think that he can have success in this league. It's just all about staying on the field, and which he hasn't done.
I haven't seen it. This is my issue with him. Like, even when he has been healthy, I have never seen him have like a 100-yard game. He has had just nothing to like really show for. Like, even in the preseason, the previous years, like when he was totally healthy, he didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. It's not like he's one of those players like Josh Gordon that's been able to put like ridiculous stats and then has had an on-the-field issue. He just, even when he is on the field, he doesn't produce. The Bears have like force-fed him the ball the last 2 years in preseason, and he finally got 1 touchdown. So to me, I don't expect anything from him. I think he's just going to be on the roster because he has a guaranteed contract, and he's probably going to be out of the league by next season.
I was about him last year. I told you even, we were talking, and I said I expected a big year out of Kevin White. He got hurt again, and it didn't work out. But if you see, I think I've seen enough from him in preseason that's going to give me reason for optimism. If he can stay healthy, stay on the field, I think that he could be a very good weapon for us this year. But the problem for me is health, and we'll see if he can figure that out. The Lions, speaking of the Lions needing some pass rush help, the Lions signed free agent defensive end Robert Ayers, so a 1-year contract. Ayers registered 8.5 sacks in 2 seasons with Tampa Bay. Do you like that sign, Gavin?
Well, it doesn't really matter if I like the signing, does it?
Does it help your team?
Not anymore, does it? Are we getting to part 2 of the story?
No. Oh.
No? Oh, part 2 of the story, if you haven't heard, he's gone.
Really?
Robert Ayers signed for 1 day and then cut.
No way.
I'm not even kidding. Yep, he's already gone.
Wow. All right, well, never mind then. Scratch that.
Former first-round pick. I asked you earlier, I was like, is he really worth covering? But
I didn't know he was gone already. That's crazy.
Yeah.
1 day.
Yeah. Robert Quinn, one of the announcers for the radio station there in Detroit, asked Bob Quinn, our
okay.
Our GM. Yeah, Robert Quinn, of the Miami Dolphins. No, Bob Quinn's probably named Robert. That's probably his full name. Anyways, they asked the Lions GM about him this year, along with another defensive end that we signed on the same day, and he totally dodged the Robert Ayers question. So wow. I think that I'm not sure how much we could learn in one day, but he must have been pretty awful in practice for us to decide, oh my gosh, this was a bad idea. Let's ditch this dude. I mean, he was a first-round pick. Definitely didn't live up to his potential, and if you get cut from the Lions, you either said some really nasty stuff about Patricia and his weight issues, or you're just not a very good player. And I'm gonna probably guess the latter.
Yeah,
Or
well.
maybe he just showed up to the team with a Chevy.
Probably, yeah. That's a big faux pas. Like this is a Ford family here.
Yep, none of that Chevy shit.
Nah.
All right, Steelers star running back Le'Veon Bell tells teammates he will return to the team facilities on Labor Day.
Fake news.
Yeah, we'll see on that. Stoyo, me and Gavin have been high on Derwin James this whole process through the draft. You not as high. Here's some. Let me ask you if this changes your mind. Chargers rookie safety Derwin James in his first start in preseason week 3 intercepts Drew Brees less than 2 minutes into the game. ESPN analyst and former NFL GM Louis Riddick on Derwin James says, quote, "This kid, when he plays, it gives me chills because the way he moves reminds me of Sean Taylor. I think he is going to take this league by storm as the next great big safety," end quote. Sean Taylor? Wow, that's some high praise for the rookie safety. What do you
Preseason doesn't matter, though. So.
think?
Interception
It does not.
Drew Brees doesn't matter. So
Stoyo not as high on
No, I'm
Derwin
not impressed.
as some.
Drake Kirkpatrick would have returned that pick for a TD, so I'm surprised you guys actually valued preseason. I'm really am.
Do you think Drew Brees is just like, yeah, whatever, throwing just little lobs? Like, he doesn't care? Like, Drew Brees, he takes this shit, he takes every game, every practice seriously. You think he's going to just slough around in the preseason? I mean, he picked off Drew Brees.
Yeah, it's something. And it was, if you watch the highlight, it wasn't, thrown directly to him. He went up over the top of the two guys. Like, there's playing safety, playing ball hawk. It was a great play. Bengals signing star defensive tackle Geno Atkins to a 4-year, $65.3 million deal. He's now $16.3 million yearly average is the highest average signed by a 30-plus-year-old non-quarterback in NFL history, if that means anything to you. The Bengals also signed defensive end Carlos Dunlap, 3-year, $45 million deal. So good for the Bengals, shoring up their defense. The Redskins expect tight end Jordan Reed to play week 1 after missing all preseason. Let's see here. Raiders, Gavin.
We're expecting him to miss half of the regular season.
Yeah, hopefully he's good by then. Gavin, we talked about this a couple weeks ago when the Raiders asked Donald Penn to take a pay cut. At the time, he wasn't as much into it, but he's agreed to take a small pay cut from his 2-year, $20 million deal signed last September. The Raiders are also asking him to switch positions from left tackle to right tackle to make room for Kelechi Osemele. Penn on the move, quote, "I just want to win." That's a good locker room guy there in Oakland.
Yeah, it's definitely the right attitude to have. I think I mentioned this last week, maybe the week before. Especially in that division, moving to right tackle is actually going to be more difficult than left tackle, in my opinion. That's the side that Von Miller shows up from. That's the side that Justin Houston shows up at. So you're facing two of the best pass rushers in the game.
Khalil. He's on his own team. Never mind.
I mean, practices maybe a little bit.
Yeah, there you go. Practice.
Yeah, but he's going to have 4 games now if he moves to right tackle, where he's facing 2 of probably the top 6 defensive ends. Outside linebackers in the 3-4.
What about Bosa? Does he come from that side?
I'm not sure where Bosa comes from, but Bosa, if if I'm not mistaken, Bosa plays the 5 technique in that 3-4.
Oh, okay.
So I might, but if they play a 4-3, I don't know that for sure. But last I knew they were a 3-4. But if they do play 4-3, he is coming off of that left end. But I mean, even if it's not Joey Bosa, you're talking about Melvin Ingram.
Yep.
And he's also a really good defensive end too. So either one of those guys, Chargers are going to have a really good defense, I think. And that's even with, what's that guy out of TCU that got hurt, the cornerback?
Jason Verrett.
Jason Verrett, yeah. Even with him out, they're going to have a stout defense.
Nice.
Anyway, sorry. Going back to
Penn.
Raiders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just surprised by the timing of it, to be honest. Why can't you do the position switch in like 2 months ago during the offseason? You were kind of throwing him to the wolves.
I think it's a new problem. I'm not sure. Yeah, it does seem kind of last minute.
This is what they did in the 70s. This is what John Gruden likes. So they moved people like right before game 1 back in the late 70s. So this is John Gruden just says this is how it's going to be. And they're paying John Gruden $10 million a year, and he's going to be the best coach ever.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they're going to – I hope my sarcasm came through there.
But anyways, good to see Donald Penn, the veteran, have a good attitude about it, be willing to win at all costs there in Oakland. Texans signed former Rams and Broncos corner Kayvon Webster to a 1-year, $2 million deal. Texans keep getting better on defense. Giants trade center Brett Jones to the Vikings for a 7th-round pick. Broncos sign veteran corner Adam Don't Call Me Pac-Man Jones to a 1-year deal. Titans wide receiver Rashard Matthews passes physical and is removed from the PUP list. And we're going to end on this, guys. This is a little fun fact, a little trivia for you guys. See if you can get it. You at home, you play as well. Alright. Cardinals star corner Patrick Peterson has played 7 seasons in the NFL. To this point, how many Pro Bowls has he made?
3.
Wrong. More.
6.
More.
All of them.
All of them. 7 Pro Bowls and 7 Pro Bowl seasons. Alright, there are 3 players in NFL history with 7 Pro Bowl selections before the age of 28. The other 2 are running backs. Patrick Peterson's only one of 3 in NFL history. The other 2 are running backs. Can you name them?
Barry Sanders.
1, that's correct.
Obviously, Roger Goodell.
You played running back?
Absolutely not.
The third one...
I'm going to assume that it's Walter Payton just because it's a Chicago homer question.
It is not. It's a guy from Cleveland.
Oh. What's his name? Jim Brown.
Yep. Jim Brown.
I didn't know that the Pro Bowl back then.
Barry Sanders, Jim Brown, Barry Sanders, and Patrick Peterson. That's a nice list.
That's good company to keep right there.
Yeah, hell yeah. So
First and second best running backs in the NFL history, right there.
Yep. Oh.
I'll let you guys decide which one's in which order.
Yeah, we're talking about.
Whichever one has a title, I guess.
Oh.
Oh, that hurts. It cuts deep.
But, alright, well, another successful podcast. We're just inching closer to the NFL season. Can't wait. We'll be back next week with our Super Bowl predictions, our preseason Super Bowl predictions. And thanks for tuning in, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or leave a comment. Thanks for coming on, Stoyo and Gavin. And we'll be back next week. Peace out.